What is going on, guys? My name is Drew Matheson. If you are new to the channel, I'm a real estate investor and agent here in the Triad of North Carolina. And today we're talking about my first ever real estate deal and how you can buy one as well. So let's jump right into it. So I was searching for a house. I had got started in real estate. This is a couple years ago, almost 3 years ago now, and got started in real estate. If you haven't watched my first video on how I got started in real estate and struggled in the beginning, please go watch that, give you kind of some context into how this was pretty exciting for me. So was able in that latter part of my first year to make some money, and that I had some money to be able to buy this house. So we were pounding the phones. We actually had a program called the Dream Home Finder. We're still doing that. So if a client wants to be in a certain neighborhood, we are going to call them, we are going to mail them, we're going to knock on their door, see if we can find a seller that's not on the market for our client, right? So we were doing that for a client of ours in the Nottingham neighborhood, which is across the street from the Palladium, if you're familiar with our market. And we were hitting that hard. Well, we ended up finding our client a house. Actually was a for sale by owner, so it wasn't on the market. But anyways, we had done all that marketing in that neighborhood, and I actually got this lead and talked to Rhonda, was her name, sweetheart. We actually still talk to her today, and she was so excited to sell us her house, and they were able to move to Myrtle Beach. We'll get in that in a second. So got that lead, and it was like 4 months later. She's like, oh, okay, let's set up an appointment. Well, we set up an appointment. And then she called me back and she's like, no, you know what? My daughter's going to buy the house. Please don't come out and waste your time. I'm not serious right now. I said, okay, great. I really appreciate you valuing my time. I'm going to send you all the market information so that you have that. Boom. Well, she emails us like 4 months later. I had continued to stay in touch, texting her and making sure she knew we were still there. She emails me 4 months later and says, hey, ready to sell, and we need to do it, but we need to be able to coordinate that with buying a house or a condo in Myrtle Beach, and we need to be able to rent the house back. Here's what we need. I said, okay, great. We met with her. We said, hey, if we list this thing, we could probably get $215 on the market. And they were like, you know, we really don't want to have to juggle that, not knowing who the buyer is. What if they back out? All those things. They're like, absolutely. We totally understand that. What we can offer you is one of my members of the team can buy it. And I was like, I'm ready to rock and roll. This is a good deal. This house was gross too, by the way. I want to point that out. I'll post some pictures here while I'm talking about it. So this was a cat house. That's what I call it. This is a cat house, and it had cats living in there. And that was part of her. She was kind of embarrassed about that because, I mean, when I'm talking about there was cats in there, there was like stuff growing on the baseboards because it was so nasty. Yeah, you can see. And it was disgusting. Well, they were a little bit ashamed of that, honestly, and didn't want to go to market and let everybody know and have open house or whatever. Obviously, probably wouldn't have done an open house anyways. But we're like, well, if a flipper wants to buy this, they need to buy it at like $190, okay? And you can go that route, and we can try to get you an offer there, or you can work directly with us. So she's like, well, let's just do it that way, and I'd be super stoked with that. So what we negotiated with them was I would buy the house for $195. I would get $5,000 in seller paid closing costs. So that means they would pay $5,000 of my cost at closing for me. Then they were also going to give me a realtor credit of $4,800 as a commission so that I could use that towards my down payment. And I would rent the house back to them for 60 days after so that they could get all their stuff done that they needed to do with that next purchase and the buy. So that's one of my first tips is when you're going off market is just figure out what it means to them. And it's not always about price to people. It's about what they need. And if you can fill that need and help them out and truly care about what's going on and not just be like, I need to buy your house. I can close in 10 days. I can close in 10 days. That's not what everybody wants. So able to negotiate that, help them. We coordinated everything with their agent in Myrtle Beach, made sure they had the money to be able to buy it. Because they had some short-term rental stuff that they had to honor. How that works is you got to honor it for like 90 days. So they bought that, and then they needed 60 days because they needed to let the people finish staying there so that they can move in. So I was able to fulfill that for them, and it went seamlessly. So My cash to close on that deal was $5,900. That's pretty sweet on a $195,000 house. Only cost me $5,900 to get into that house, and I had a mortgage payment of $1,150. Got a good interest rate, 3.125, and was in it for very little. Well, I had to renovate this thing. Like I said, it was full of cats. So what I did was it's going to cost me about $8,500 to fix this place up. And that's paint. I did most of the painting myself and had one of my, cousin-in-law help me. And we painted this thing all together. She did all the cutting in, I did all the rolling. It was super fun. Well, I actually didn't have the money to do the renovation. So I bought this house basically with not quite enough money. I had enough, but I didn't want to deplete all of my savings. I think I had like $5 or $6 grand. So like I could have done most of it with the cash that I had, but I was like, I really need to keep that money for like stuff that pops up and need to be liquid, right? So what I did was I went and I got a 0% interest for 12-month credit card, American Express Blue Cash every day. Love it. And slapped the entire renovation on that card, maxed it out, and wrote it out for a full year. And then that's when I sold the house, so I was able to pay it off. Don't necessarily recommend that, but I find with risk it didn't really bother me because I knew that it was a great deal. I could either refinance down the road. Eventually I did have the money to just pay it off, but I was like, it's 0%. The only thing it's hurting is my credit, and I don't really care. You know, credit's just a score. You do need to have a good credit, but don't overthink it. So I did that and was able to get it renovated. And so put about $8,500 in there. Well, I was thinking, this house is be worth about $245 as soon as I'm done. Well, we all know what happened. The market went absolutely berserk. And I was looking at this house down the street sold, and I was like, man, my house is worth easily $275. My guess would be it'll probably sell for more than that. But I think it's time to sell. But the real reason that I sold was something called return on equity. And what that means is, so if you don't know what equity means, that means what the property is worth minus what you owe on it. So that middle portion is equity. So if your house is worth $150,000 and you have a $100,000 loan on it, your equity is $50,000. So I did the math, and after the cash flow that I would get, I had a AC unit coming up that I had to replace, and I think that was my only major capital expenditure that I had. So after I factored in replacing that in 2 years, then what my cash flow would be versus the amount of equity that I would have left in that deal, it didn't make sense. It was a super low number. I think it was like 5 to 7%, which is obviously still a great return on your money. But I'm trying to scale fast. I want to get here as quick as possible. It's like, that's not a good use of my money. So the return on equity was garbage. So I said, it's time to sell and put that money into other assets, or use it to buy other assets that I can then refinance and have no money in, but I have my own money liquid that I can use. So that is what I decided to sell. It wasn't just, oh, look at all this money. It was return on equity doesn't make sense. So sold the house I listed it at $275, ended up getting, I think I got 8 offers. The highest one was, I didn't even take the highest offer. The highest offer was cash $302,000, but it was a buyer that I know was going to come back and try to gut me like a fish on repairs, and they didn't have a non-refundable deposit. So I actually ended up taking an offer for $295 with a $5,000 non-refundable deposit, and they were going to close in 21 days and allow me a rent back till the day that I had promised my roommates that they needed to be out by. So was able to get that done and closed on the house. So that profit, my like net was probably like low 80s. I'd say, yeah, like maybe high 70s. But actual liquid cash I had, I got a check at closing for $98,000, and then had that non-refundable deposit as well. So it was a significant amount of change that I had. The profit was lower. Obviously, I got to pay taxes and all that stuff, but was able to roll that directly into a flip. That's a story for another day, but that was pretty fun too. It was lined it up perfectly where I could close on it at the same time. So what I would say is, obviously this is not just for me to brag, this is how you can do this as well. So the first thing is you need to figure out your lending. Figure out where you're at there, if you need a co-signer, what you've got to do, if you've got to use hard money, whatever it takes to find that deal. So figure out lending. The second thing is decide where you want to find that deal. If you've got the money to go off market, start making some calls or sending some postcards. If you got a W-2 job, postcards are the most passive way, but it just costs a lot. Start sending mailers to a niche list and start finding deals that way. Or you can go on the MLS, and since you're buying it to do a live-in, it's not like you've got to get, a 30% margin like I do on a flip. It is, you can pay a little bit more. So go on the MLS, put in TLC, keywords like that. Also has lots of potential. Agents love posting that. I don't know. I think it's hilarious. Has lots of potential is other words for this is a turd, but you can make it beautiful. I wish they would just say it that way. Anyways, so after you set up that MLS search, then you need to get representation. Like I said, probably even before you find the lending, but we're gonna put this here because as an investor, like, you can do these deals without an agent. Highly encourage you to have representation, because even though you think you know everything, you don't. I learn stuff every single day, and I'm like, man, I feel like an idiot right now. So there's always things to learn. So having representation is a great way to go. But finding an agent that has done investments, has investment properties of their own, and works with investors is extremely important. These retail agents don't understand the numbers of it. Yes, they may sell you a really pretty house, but if they don't understand true value, how to force appreciation, stuff like that, not gonna be a good fit. And then the last one, you gotta be patient to find these deals, but don't have analysis paralysis. I know that seems like a bait and switch or whatever you want to call it. I guess is that bait and switch? Catch 22? I don't know. One of those statements. Anyways, yes, you want to be patient and wait for that right deal. But if you keep waiting around and you have analysis paralysis, and that deal that you looked at, a year ago that you could have bought for $150, it's now worth $175 and you have no house. So don't sit around and wait too long, but also be patient and don't buy a dud. I've bought duds and it's not fun. So that's what I would have to say about that. I hope that was helpful. That was the first ever deal that I did in real estate. Turned out well. Not every deal comes out that beautiful, and you're not always going to see that huge amount of appreciation like I did, but got lucky, got blessed, and was able to do that. So that is the deal. I hope this was helpful on how you can do it. You're going to go direct to seller. You're going to have those searches set up on the MLS. Get some representation. I've got deals that I find, and I talk to sellers that don't want to list all the time, that they just want a buyer. So find you somebody that does stuff like that. And then 5 is be patient, but also know when you see an opportunity and it looks good and it feels good and you see the numbers behind it that make sense, you see a neighborhood that's continued to grow, just buy the dang house. Peace.